Hello and welcome back to Learning Legislation with Cesar Lopez. My name is Susanna Ramshaw and I oversee trustee programs and engagement with Texas Healthcare Trustees. Cesar is our Associate General Counsel with the Texas Hospital Association and is here to give a summary report of what's been happening inside the state capitol building this past month. It is officially the month of May, meaning this could potentially be the last month of the session. But good news, we will definitely have a wrap up for you all next month when things come to a close. So Cesar, I will hand it over to you.
All right, thanks Susanna, and thanks to everybody at home watching. Again, always happy to be here with you all. Hopefully you guys are learning a ton from these webinars. And again, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to reach out to either one of us. We're happy to have a discussion with you all offline on any of these issues that we've discussed, or really anything related to what we're doing across the street of the Capitol during this session. Again, Susanna, as you noted, it's May. Today is May the 6th. This will be the last month of regular session. Regular session will end at the end of May, no matter what. It has to, constitutionally required to end at the end of May. Now we do, I think I mentioned this in prior months, expect there to be at least one 30-day special session at some point during this year. As I sit here today, we are expecting that special session to be sort of an August, September, fall timeframe, somewhere in there. But again, we do expect there to be at least one 30-day special session, potentially longer, later this year. And that's really to get the folks at the Capitol a chance to do the redistricting. A lot of that census data just hit, the state a couple weeks ago. It wasn't soon enough for them to do something with it during the regular session. So again, there will almost certainly be a special session to deal with that redistricting and any other issues that the governor deems important for at least one special session. So stay tuned for that. If we can come back and start this up later in the year, I'm more than happy to. Again, we'll just kind of see what is put on that agenda for that special session if and when it hits later this year. Again, I've been doing this every single month. I want to keep reminding you guys, if you haven't had the chance to download our THA legislative app, please do so. I promise you, there is a ton of stuff on there that you will find interesting. There are everything that we produce here, whether it's our one-pagers, our education documents, links to our testimony that we do at the Capitol. It's all going to be available through the app. You'll be able to get those pushes, information pushed to you through the app, kind of in real time. So again, if there's anything at all that you are interested in with regards to the session, and you don't already have this app, I encourage you guys to go ahead and find it on the App Store or the Google Play Store, download it. And I promise you guys will find some use in that. So again, just another plug for that. Again, as we kicked off this webinar, again, we're in May. It's the last official month of regular session. We are absolutely in the home stretch. I mentioned to you guys, and I started back in January, February, when we explained sort of how the legislature works, how a bill makes it through the process, that the process here in Texas for a bill to go from being introduced all the way to the governor's desk and being signed into law is extremely complex. Again, I showed this diagram, this slide to you guys back in January, February, but I pull it up again to just remind you all that our process is designed as such to try to kill bills. It's intended to make it very difficult for bills to make it all the way to the finish line, so to speak. It's very hard for a bill to be fully signed into law. And so again, I mentioned that there's something like 8,000 or 10,000 bills filed every session. Some really high number in the thousands. There's usually about 15 to 20% of those actually make it to the finish line. So again, we're in the final month of the regular session, way less than 30 days remain. I think we're probably at 24 days, 23 days left in the regular session as we sit here today. And bills are absolutely falling by the wayside. So if we had gone back to January, February, and we looked at all the bills that we were concerned with, that we were monitoring, that we were paying attention to here at THA, that number every passing day, really every passing hour, shrinks smaller and smaller and smaller. So when we get to the next slide where we talk about bills of note, you're going to start, if you've been watching these over the past months, you're going to note that a lot of these bills we've already talked about. I mean, they're They're coming up again because they're sort of the survivors, if you will. They continue to exist, they continue to move, they continue to have some life in them. But again, as we move towards closer and closer towards the end of May, there's going to be a number of deadlines in the next week, in the next 2 weeks, in the next 3 weeks, where bills effectively die as a result of not making it past a certain point by that deadline. So there's a deadline in the next couple of Fridays where if a bill hasn't made it through the House and gone to the Senate, it's effectively dead. And so, we here at THA will watch that that day's House activity, the floor activity in the House with great interest, and we'll stay here really till midnight. Because at that point, at midnight, if a bill hasn't made it past a certain point by midnight of that day, it's dead. And so we pay close attention to that to figure out if there are any bills, again, that we're concerned about that haven't made it past that point. Again, they're dead. We don't have to worry about them after that point. And so again, it just narrows that scope of the bills, the scope of the issues that we've been concerned about even further. So again, getting close to the end here, the bills that we're really concerned about continue to be concerns for us. And so we continue to pay attention to those, continue to work on them. But in the meantime, while we've been in the heart of session, in the thick of everything, a couple of weeks ago on April 16th, it was a classic Friday afternoon at probably about 3 p.m. We got notice that the federal government, CMS, decided to rescind our 10-year 1115 waiver that had just been approved in January. So this was a waiver that we have basically been working on for years. We were working with the state HHSC to negotiate, the particularities of this waiver. This was a huge deal for us. It's a mechanism that we've been using here in the state of Texas for years and years and years to try to provide compensation for a lot of that uncompensated care that hospitals provide. Again, as you all know, we did not and have not expanded Medicaid under the ACA over the past 11 years. A lot of folks try to tie the waiver to Medicaid expansion. They're not necessarily one and the same. They're absolutely related, but not necessarily one and the same. We have to continually remind folks that expanding Medicaid would certainly provide healthcare insurance coverage to a lot of folks that currently don't have it, but it's not going to get us all the way there. There's always going to have to be something else to kind of fill in the gaps. There's still several million people that even under ACA expanded Medicaid would still remain uninsured. And again, something like the waiver doesn't have to specifically be this waiver, but something like the waiver helps kind of fill in those gaps. So just a couple of numbers on the waiver. Again, it was a 10-year waiver originally approved in January. It provided approximately $32 billion in new funding and another $10 billion in additional support over that time frame. And the concerns we have with the rescission of this waiver, the April 16th rescission, have to do with, how does this affect the state's budget? How does this affect the healthcare programs that were transitioning off of the prior waiver? Again, this is an extension, so there's some stuff that was going to sunset with the old waiver. And then again, as I mentioned, just all of this has to do with access to care, paying for care that's provided to these folks that otherwise can't pay for it. They're uninsured. So really it's a hindrance in access to care. That's the main concern that we have. Now, if you guys want more information on that, again, reach out to either Susanna or myself, or you can go directly to our tha.org/waiver website, and there's a lot of our information out there. Again, huge deal. We'll continue to work on this. Hopefully we'll be able to report back to you all at some point this year with good news on this. So with that, moving again to the bills of note, and again, I know we're trying to keep this to 15 minutes. I have a habit of running well past that. I apologize, Susanna, but I'll try to move this quickly. Again, a lot of these bills, a lot of these issues we've already discussed. You can go back to the prior month's webinars and get more information on these bills. So I'll try not to go too deep into these, but again, any questions, comments, concerns, let either one of us know, and we're happy to have that discussion with you. So the first bill, HB 1424, has to do with conscientious objection by healthcare providers in the healthcare setting. This bill is incredibly broad, would essentially allow any healthcare provider to object to any procedure on a religious or moral basis. So you can think of things like, certainly abortion, end of life type of issues, but it potentially goes further than that and really allows somebody to object to really anything that they might have any objection to, again, whether it's religious or moral, that might take place in a hospital or a healthcare setting. The way I read that bill is it goes beyond sort of the treatment team, if you will. You might have, support staff within the facility that might object to something, even though they're not really like a hands-on, in the room when the procedure is taking place. So there's a lot of major concerns that we've had with that bill as it was filed, again, because of the potential almost assured disruption in operations. So we did testify against that bill a couple of weeks ago. We did urge the legislature to allow hospitals to address these issues with objections sort of on a one-on-one individual kind of localized level, which is how we usually handle any sort of disputes or employment type issues anyway. There's really no need to take a broad brush paint stroke to this issue when we can resolve those as we have been individually with those healthcare workers. So again, that bill is of concern to us. It's out there. It's still technically alive. So again, we're monitoring it. We'll let you know if anything comes of that next month. The next issue here, again, we've talked about, I think, several months now, this workers' comp presumption in HB 396. Again, you've heard me mention this, but this is a bill that would flip the current presumption under workers' comp and create a presumption that a nurse that contracted COVID in the hospital, it's presumed that they contracted it while in the line of duty, so to speak. So it would basically be a presumption for workers' comp coverage for COVID for a nurse, as opposed to the current presumption, which is you have to show with competent evidence that there's really no other way you could have contracted COVID other than through exposure at work and not because of some community spread activity, or somebody went out on a vacation to Mexico or something like that. I mean, so there's definitely some concerns that we have with that House bill and that flipping of the workers' comp presumption. So we did testify against that bill, if you remember, but it was voted out in the last couple of weeks. It's still very much live. We'll continue to monitor it and let you know where that winds up next month. The next bullet point here, billing, payment, and cost disclosures. There's a lot of bills here, so I'm probably not going to get to all of them. But again, as you all have heard me say over the last couple of months, we've kind of been under attack, so to speak, with regard to disclosures of charge master rates and negotiated rates, and how hospitals sort of bill and collect payments from patients. And so there's a number of bills that, again, we've mentioned in prior months that try to address this. So the first is HB 2064, which would alter the way a hospital collects on a hospital lien under Chapter 55 of the Property Code. These are, for those of you that are unfamiliar with that process, there is an ability in the Property Code for a hospital to file a lien against an injured patient's recovery in a third-party lawsuit. So if I'm out, driving home, I get involved in an auto accident, that's not my fault. Somebody else hits my vehicle and sends me to the hospital. The hospital would have the ability to file a lien in the event that I choose to sue the person that caused the accident and try to collect from that person, any of my damages, any of the costs incurred in repairing my vehicle, paying for the medical care, et cetera. So hospital is basically saying, you came in as a result of that accident. We had to provide care as a result of that accident. So when you go out and you sue that person that caused the accident and sent you to the hospital, we're just filing a lien to make sure we get paid for the care that we provided from whatever you recover from that third party in that lawsuit. So it doesn't allow hospital to go after somebody's home, garnish their wages, foreclose on any property. It's really just attaching to whatever comes out of that lawsuit that's filed as a result of that accident. So this would alter that process. This would allow the plaintiff's attorneys to recover a lot more of their, or statutorily recover some costs and expenses, which is generally something that, for hospitals that do engage in this lien practice, is negotiated between the attorney and the hospital. They kind of work this out and come to an agreement on what they think is fair in compensating that attorney for that work. But again, this bill would just basically mandate that out of that hospital's recovery, they have to pay that attorney's fees and expenses. And again, we have issues with that. That really goes against the way that this practice works out in the real world. And so, we want to see if we can fine tune some of that language and work out a better solution there. So again, more to come on that. The other bill is SB 2122. This bill would require a hospital that is seeking to collect from a patient, require the hospital to send that patient an itemized bill anytime that a request for that payment is made. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but if you've ever really gone into a patient's actual bill, I mean, if you go and you look at the itemized bill, you're talking about line items for things like a Q-tip, an aspirin, a Band-Aid, a line item, itemized bill for any given patient could be dozens, potentially 100 pages, potentially even more, if you really have to line item all of those things out. So again, we currently, and a lot of you all know this, if a patient requests an itemized bill, we will give them that itemized bill, but we don't generally send an itemized bill as a matter of practice when trying to collect from a patient. So mandating that itemized bill every single time, again, is going to be a huge operational challenge and certainly a cost in printing and mailing and all that sort of stuff. So again, we have major concerns with that bill. We did testify against it. We'll continue to work on that one. The last bill under this bullet point, SB 207. This has to do, again, going back to the world of auto accidents, injured patients that come into the hospital as a result of an accident. This bill would, or at least seeks to cap the amount that a hospital can request as a result of those lawsuits. So, you see a lot of these lawyers out there that talk about their multi-million-dollar verdicts as a result of these 18-wheeler accidents or whatever it may be. The allegation there is that the medical charges in those lawsuits when they're sent to the jury are massively inflated. So this bill seeks to bring those numbers down a bit. So it would cap the amount that a provider, hospitals included, can submit in those lawsuits as part of that recovery. In return, it would exempt a lot of those providers and hospitals included again from having to engage in that discovery in those cases. So basically the hospital in this case could submit an affidavit for the prescribed amount and basically be free and clear. They don't have to show up to testify. They don't have to be deposed. They don't have to, engage any further in that lawsuit or kind of be bothered any further in those lawsuits. This has been a concern for us for a number of years now. We've had a number of hospitals, especially our rural hospitals, that have been sort of embroiled in these lawsuits and being forced to engage in a lot of this discovery that really, is of no benefit to the hospital. The hospital is just trying to get paid for the care they provided as a result of that accident. And they have to turn around and have to fight off a deposition or prepare for a deposition or turn over a bunch of documents or go to the courthouse and argue why our negotiated rates with Blue Cross Blue Shield, for example, shouldn't be discovered in a case where Blue Cross Blue Shield is not even at issue. So again, this SB 207 is a bill that we have been working on from even before session started, and we'll continue to do so. And again, hopefully have some good news for you all next month. I'll run through the rest of these pretty quickly. Firearms, HB 1927. This is a bill that would allow, again, it gets to that constitutional carry issue, but would in theory have allowed an individual to carry a firearm into a hospital subject to somebody verbally informing that individual that you can't bring a gun into the hospital. The issue there, of course, is that we currently have signs that we post at the entrances to our hospitals that notify, you can't bring a firearm onto the premises, and so that's your legal notice to that individual that they are restricted from carrying the firearm any further. This again would essentially do away with that, or would have done away with that, and required the hospital in this case to give verbal notice to that individual that firearms are not allowed. I think we worked out an agreement on that. It's still kind of in the works. Again, hopefully I'll have some good news for you on that one next month. But again, we wanted to do away with that verbal notice and go back to these signage that we've been using for several years now. Utilities, HB 1382. This was kind of a fun one that I got to testify on earlier this week. This is a bill that will allow hospitals to drill and operate their own commercial wells, water wells, to serve as an emergency backup in the event that water service is disrupted in some form or fashion. This is 100% a result of the winter storm from back in February, where hospitals had to go without power and water for extended periods of time. Hospitals basically said, look, we'll pay the potentially millions of dollars that it costs to design and build these wells, but there's a lot of regulatory red tape that we have to work through to get to the point where we can start digging. And so this bill seeks to sort of lower those barriers, those entry barriers, and allow hospitals greater freedom to shore up their own utility infrastructure. So again, a really neat bill. I was really happy to go out and testify on it, and it really was received well by the Senate. So hopefully that bill will get some legs and kind of move towards the finish line here in the last couple of weeks of session. Mandating vaccines. Actually, I was telling Susanna just before we started recording, these bills are being heard currently at the Senate now. Our general counsel is actually waiting to testify as we sit here recording this webinar. These bills, again, super broad, super general. I'm kind of paraphrasing here because they're very long bills. Are generally prohibit against requiring vaccines of employees, prohibit an employer from mandating a vaccine of employees, and also mandate an employer from adopting policies to require vaccines. Again, there's a lot more to these bills, but those are sort of the highlights there. As you can imagine, we're the hospital association. Our hospitals are very concerned with any inability to require these vaccines. Of course, you will always have religious and other sort of allowed exceptions to those policies, but by and large, we want to make sure that our staff is protected. We're protecting our patients. We're protecting the public at large. That's the reason a lot of our facilities, if not all of our facilities, mandate, the flu vaccine, other vaccines of our employees and staff as a condition of working in our hospitals. So again, we have major concerns with the breadth of these bills, the scope of these bills, and the inability for sort of a broad brush, you just can't mandate vaccines in the state of Texas. So we are going to oppose this bill. We're going to testify in opposition. Hopefully we can find a solution that works for everybody. But again, should have more information for you all next month on that one. End of life. These are bills, again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on them, that we've discussed in prior months. These are major concerns for us here at THA. All of these bills we've had some sort of hand in negotiating or supporting. The bill of biggest concern is HB 2609. I lost it there for a second, but it's right there. The second one there, HB 2609. That is the bill that would kind of do away with that so-called 10-day rule, as folks like to call it, in Chapter 144.046. You guys have probably heard there's a case currently pending up in Fort Worth dealing with a very sick 2-year-old infant. The hospital and the family are involved in a lawsuit over really the hospital's ability, if you will, to withdraw care from this individual, where the hospital has provided testimony that the patient is in pain and suffering, has really no likelihood of recovery. She's still very much alive. We certainly admit that, but the hospital has some concerns with the treatment that's being provided to this patient, and sort of the any benefit or maybe even lack of benefit, as the hospital might put it, that the patient's receiving. So, we engage in these bills every 2 years. We always have a very difficult fight in fighting through these issues. Again, there's very good arguments on both sides here. And we always try to find a middle ground, try to see if there's some way that we can find something that works for everybody. And so we've been in some pretty heavy negotiations on these bills over the last couple of weeks, continue to negotiate on these bills, continue to try to find a solution. If we can't find a solution before the end of session, I'm sure we'll be working on these in the interim and potentially next session as well. So again, hopefully we'll have some more news for you all next month. But again, if you're interested in these end-of-life issues, let us know. I'm happy to have that conversation with you offline, or you can take a look at any one of these 4 bills here. Again, we had a hand in almost every single one of them. And again, if you need more info, just let us know. The last bill that I'll finish with today, HB 3661, has to do with rural hospitals and education for the Hospitals Governance Committee. This is a bill that John Hawkins, you see a picture of him testifying right there, testified on a couple of weeks ago. This bill would require hospitals to, on request, provide education and training on the governing body's powers, duties, and other appropriate topics. The way the bill was drafted as filed is that the state would have been responsible for providing that education and training. We basically went and said, hey, look, we've got this great organization, THT. We know them very well. We think they would do a great job under this bill and helping with that education and training. So we really, think you guys should consider that. And so that's the reason we didn't fully support the bill. But again, John did a great job testifying for it, got some really good questions from the committee. Hopefully something will come out of that that'll benefit everybody involved with THT. But again, we'll let you guys know next month when we do our session wrap up. So with that, again, I'm sure we went over 15 minutes, Susanna, but again, we're in the home stretch. We've got a couple more weeks left to go. We'll be back here next month, let you guys know what things look like. So please, if you haven't tuned in for any of these prior webinars, try to catch that last one. We'll have some good information there. And then I will actually be speaking at the THT conference in July, Saturday morning. I think I'm one of the first breakout sessions of the day. So if you are going to be attending the conference in July, if you're going to be joining us in San Antonio, please come to that session. I'd love to meet you, love to chat with you, love to answer any questions you guys might have. And so again, look forward to that, and any other questions you guys may have, just let us know.
Thank you so much, Cesar. I will say that hearing John Hawkins testify on behalf of THT in front of that committee was really cool. It felt really special to hear our name be called out and advocate for us. So thank you. And thank you for that update. That was great. I know, we've had a lot of action around the 1115 waiver, a lot of members coming to us saying, help, what does this mean? So it's really helpful to know that, there's a whole 1-pager or 2-pager on education around that resource. So
yeah, and remind folks that it didn't end, it didn't all just fall apart on the 16th. There's a sort of an off ramp here that we're going to kind of work through, even if we can't get something worked out. So it's not this cliff that, you just fall off and it's over. So yes, please send us any questions. Again, I know you're more than capable of answering them as well, but if you guys need any help from us over here in legal or advocacy, we'd be more than happy to engage on that.
Super. And yeah, and just to piggyback on what you were saying, Cesar, about our annual healthcare governance conference, we are holding the event live and in person, as well as virtual streaming. That will be July 22nd through July 24th at the JW Marriott San Antonio Hill Country Resort or online. So our registration is open. If you visit tht.org/HGC, you can find the information there. And Cesar's event will be sort of a collab with other members from our communications and advocacy team. And I hear it's a pretty hot event for you guys. I've heard that the attendance is usually pretty good. So make sure you sign up now. All right. Well, thank you so much, Cesar. Sure. And we'll see y'all next month.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.